Hello, all. Dash back after many months. Sorry, I don't make content very regularly. This was one I had hoped to make much sooner. This has kind of been just my life as it is. I get very busy. This is something I like to do for fun, so sometimes I get an idea for a video. I don't get to it right away. And so here we are now, months later after my last video, with everything you need to know on how to play the Gundam card game. Naturally, the Gundam card game has been going on for about 4 or 5 months. It came out in July. I mean, not counting like even the beta release and all that. People have been playing much longer than the official release, but we are officially into set 2 now. So set 3 is coming out actually in 2 months. So a lot to look forward to. Things have shifted with the introduction to set 2. We got some new statuses, card effects, a new card color, some new archetypes. But the primary idea of this video is, in some of the groups and stuff, just basic questions always come up, and I feel like this is a good video just to have out there to maybe you want to introduce someone to Gundam, and this is a good way to just kind of cover everything you need to know. I'm not going to like go in too heavy into mechanics and stuff like that. I'm going to go over rulings, turn progression, effects, keywords, all that good stuff, so that when you sit down to play the game, you're not going to be completely lost, and you'll have a good understanding, I think, to just drop in. So let's get this started, and let's look at the essential basics. So every deck is going to start up with 50 cards, and you've got 2 colors that you can have in there. So there's white, blue, green, red, and purple. You can do monocolor if you want. I've seen cards that are, like you got like the Academy packages that just do mono white or maybe even a mono purple deck are out there. So they are out there, but I usually suggest doing 2 colors. You kind of mix and match some strengths of both the colors at that point. There's 4 different card types you'll need to be familiar with: the units, the pilots, commands, and bases. So those will be all in that 50 card deck. You have resource cards, which will be a separate deck on its own, and token cards, which will be a third deck. So resource cards, you'll always have 10 of them, and token decks will include an EX base and EX resource all the time, but then some cards have effects that'll deploy tokens, so you would want to include those token cards in that token deck also. And because official ruling is that you have to have all 3 of these decks sleeved individually from each other. So you can't use the same sleeve color for your resource deck, your token deck, and your main deck. Everything has to be identified differently from each other. So let's go over the different like cards. So like this is a unit card as an example. And how are you going to read this card? So the primary thing to know is the level and the cost. So, what is level? This is something that some people get mixed up because they get level and cost mixed up all the time. Level is the total number of resources you have to have on the board. So it's not, you could have, let's say, 5 resources. So you're at level 5 at that point. And to play the card from your hand, it'll cost 3. So you have to take 3 of those resources and rest them, which I'll cover. I'll give you an example of what it looks like when you play a card, but just know that you have the total number of resources, which is your level, and the cost, which is the number of resources you have to rest to pay that cost. The set number is going to be up there in the top right. It's good to know the set number for these cards because some of them have alt arts, they have reprints. So the fact is you can only have 4 of one card number in your deck, not the name of the card. So like there's 5 different Gundams just in this game already, so you can have 4 of each of those Gundams in the game, but you can only have one GD01001 in your deck at you can only have 4 of them at one time. So if they do like a reprint, like there's a close combat and unforeseen incident, they'll they have different arts. So you can't have four of each of the arts. It's still the same number in the top right corner. Also, so you'll have your basic the effects here. I'll cover all the keywords and all the stuff that will mean, but just know, you would read your effects here. Traits. So this card has Earth Federation and White Base Team as the trait. So you can notice how this effect here goes for White Base Team units. So that's what it means when you have a trait. The trait is not a link condition. I know some people will read these trait boxes and they'll think that's the link condition. The link is going to be that little box right there, the black box. It'll have the link arrow right next to it. This is your link condition. So when you're pairing pilots with it, if it meets the link condition, is what is going to be referred to as a link. And this will give the unit rush, which means it can attack on the turn it's played, because normally when you play a unit, they can't attack on the moment it's played. Also, the other two stats you really need to be familiar with is obviously the AP and the HP. AP is the amount of damage you do, and HP is the amount of damage you can take. Pilot cards. So, like this is Amuro Ray. He can link with Gundam. So he meets that link condition. But same idea. You can only have four of the same set number for a pilot. They still have the same idea of the cost and the level. Now every pilot will have just like the AP boost and the HP boost. So this is when you pair a pilot with a unit, this will show how much it boosts that unit. So if I put Amuro on that Gundam, which is a 3/3, and this is +2/+1, that means now this Gundam would be a 5/4. So it has 5 AP, 4 health. You'll have your pair effects or link effects here. So different keywords will be here. I will cover those keywords here in a little bit. But just know this is how you're going to be reading the card. So I'm just trying to lay out what you would be looking for. Command cards. There's different types of command cards that you're going to have out there. So, command cards they have very specific effects. Same idea is that you're going to be playing the card from hand. You're going to pay the cost. You have to meet the level requirement based on how many total resources you have. Some will just be you play the card from hand, do the effect that's on it. Others, there are some hybrid command cards that can also function as a pilot. So, like Mula Flaga, I can choose to either pair him with a unit and maybe even get a link if there's a card out there that has the link condition for Mu or Earth Alliance. And then also, I could play him as a command. And then so I would do the command up here. You can't do both. So with these command pilots, they either are the pilot or their command. So you can't play both effects at the same time, which I don't think I've seen a command card with a pilot effect. It's usually just the stat and name and stuff, but that could always change. Base cards, this is the final core card that you're going to have. So bases will protect your shield area. Every game you start with an EX base card, which is a token, but you can have other bases in your deck that have very specific effects or synergy with your deck. Every time you deploy a base out there, you have to take one of your shield cards and add it to hand. Unless there is 0 cards in your shield area, you can still deploy the base. You just wouldn't be able to add anything to your hand if there's nothing there. But you do as much of conditions as you can as possible. Bases will usually have 5 HP. Some have 4, some have 6. They usually have 0 in this AP box. I'm not sure if there's going to be some point where we're going to get bases out there that might have damage on them. But all you need to know is the base card is another type of card. They don't go in your main field. They will go in the shield area. Resource cards, so you got the basic art resources that you might get in your starter decks if you actually manage to get one. Or in the booster packs, you'll get the cooler looking resources, which will have a mobile suit on them, so you can deck out, pimp out your resource deck with however you want. The only you can do any combination of cards you want. You can have as many as them, up to 10 as you want. But the Every resource deck is 10. 10 is the limit. You have to have 10. And then token cards. So you're always going to start off that EX base. You should always have an EX resource on you in case you're going second. So when you're deciding who goes first and second, the player with the second gets the EX resource, which also contributes to your total level. So when you start the game, the person going second will technically be at level 2 already. And then there's on the right, you got the unit tokens that I was referring to. So like this would be the Gundam. He comes from the white base card. You pay 2, and if you had 0 on the field, then it would deploy this. Now, the thing with tokens is you have to know that they are level 0 and cost 0. There are effects that target specific units based on level or even cost. So it's just something to keep in mind, like that Hawk of Endymion that can return one enemy with 3 or less HP, and that's not a cost or level thing, but it could bounce this to hand. Now, when you take a token to your hand, that it can't exist in your hand, so you'll just be putting it back in your token pile when that occurs. But just something to keep in mind with that. Like if the most common thing you'll see with token cards, especially, is bouncing them or targeting them with like abilities that target low level units, because they're easy to take care of. If you bounce them, they can't exist in the hand, so you just get rid of a unit for that effect. So this is an example of what your board layout's gonna look like. Primary thing to know is like the shield area, so you'll always have that base protecting your shield. There's always gonna be 6 shields. You got your resource area here, so you can only have up to 10 resource cards there, and then in addition to that 10, you can have 5 EX resources. So you theoretically could have 15 total cards there if you manage to reach that point. There are some cards that will give you additional EX resource. Typically, in all those green ramp decks, you're using those EX resources to get to a higher level so you can deploy like the Ween 0 as soon as possible. So once you reach that level 8, you're probably expending those EX resources. But sometimes you make it to the late game and you still have 1 or 2 just, hovering there. You can only have up to 6 units deployed at one time in your battle area. So let's look at the scenario that I have 5 units on the field and I deploy Corsica base, which can deploy 2 tokens. You have to choose one of your units to remove from field. So if your battle area is already full and you deploy something, you have to remove something from the field also. And it can't be what you're deploying. So you can't choose one of those 1/1 tokens to not come out to the field. It has to be something that's already on the field. Just something to keep in mind. But the key thing about the shield area, when you're setting up, you got to start from the bottom. So you're putting cards from the top of your deck. You'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then when you're taking damage, you're going to be working the opposite way down. So when I attack here and I lose a shield, or your opponent loses a shield, they have to take the top card and they're going to work their way down 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's very specific in the rules. I know I go to locals and some people don't follow that exactly. I'm not going to make a big fuss about it at locals, but I'm saying it now for people to be aware, because if you go to a big tournament or someone that might be anal about rules, it's very specific in the rules that you have to deploy your shields and remove your shields in that order. So, as I mentioned earlier, you'll go determine who's first and winner gets to choose. So if you do like dice roll, rock, paper, scissors, just some way to determine who gets to choose who goes to first and second. Most people will choose to go second because of that EX resource, but there are some decks that do function well even going first, so it's not that essential. You might have a bit of a slower start if you don't get that EX resource to begin with, but I mean, this is all about deck balance. Sometimes you just have to make sure that your deck is optimized for either condition. So once you choose who's going first and second, then you'll shuffle your decks, cut it, cut your opponent's deck, and each of you are drawing 5 cards in the opening hand. Typically, what you want to do is you want to look for the top 5, or you want to look for 5 cards. You want to make sure there's cards in your hand that you can play early, so like level 2 and 3 cards. Because if your hand is all pilots or commands, and there's not like the only unit you have there is level 5 or 6, it's probably best to mulligan. So the mulligan is you just put that opening hand at the bottom of the deck, draw another 5, and then you only get the mulligan once. So there have been moments where it's like I open with a bad hand, and then I'm like, I'm gonna mulligan this, and then you get a worse hand. So that's always wonderful. But that you only get the mulligan once, and then you reshuffle, and then you'll do the shield down. So you'll start from the top of the deck, putting the shield 6, that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that we did here. So you have to start from the bottom, and then the last card that you put down should be that top shield. Turn progression. So it's always going to go start phase. You're going to everything that's rested. So what is rested? So active is just vertical, and rested is horizontal. So if you've played any other card games out there, you'll know it's just basically you're just flipping it back to vertical position. It shows that the unit is active. Your resources will be all reactivated at that moment. So you'll activate everything. You'll draw a card. You'll put a resource card from your resource deck into the resource area. So you'll always gain a resource every turn. And then main phase, this is pretty much your turn. So everything is done here. There's no limits on, like, you can play cards from your hand, you can attack, you can do your command, everything, activate effects, and then once you're done, you'll do the end phase, which also has an action step that we will cover. So we'll cover the main phase because there's just a lot. This is the bulk of your turn. So this is where you're playing cards from your hand. You can declare attacks. Unlike other card games where they have different phases for attacks and playing cards from hand, this one is just any combination. So I could start off my turn by just attacking with any units I have on the field already. Then I can play cards from hand. I can attack with more units if I want to. And I can just do this until I'm done with my turn. There are specific cards that have specific timing. So like activate main and main. Those specific cards can only be played during your main phase. Other cards that have action, it can only be played during the action step, which we'll cover. Now, when you do declare an attack, this begins what's called the actions, or the attack step. So, before I do that, what is playing a unit in Perrin and Lincoln Pilot's going to be like? So, we know about the cost for units, so when you play a unit to the field, let's kind of just cover this first. So, I have 6 resources and 1 EX resource on the field. So I am at level 7. So that means I can play any card that has level 7. I'll play Gundam Aerial Rebuild, which is a level 7 card. And it costs 5. So you take 5 resources and you're going to rest it. And that pays for the cost. Now I have 2 resources still left that I can do anything I want with. So I could theoretically, let's say, pay 1 more, and I can pair a pilot with this one, which would also be a link, because Suletta is the link condition, and this you would pair that with the Gundam Aerial Rebuild and get the link effect, and then you get Rush. So you can't attack on the turn you play the card, but if you do get that link condition, then you can attack on it. When you play a card from hand to the field, the deploy effects are done at this moment, and there's a lot. You're gonna see this with a lot of effects in this game. The keyword usually describes the timing or when the effect triggers, and you have to do the effect when that timing or trigger occurs. There's no, unless it says you may in the effect description. Pretty much all effects in this game are mandatory, so you do as much of an effect as possible. So like Perfect Strike Gundam, let's say it has a deploy effect where you choose a enemy unit with 1 HP or less and return it to the opponent's hand. So if you play that card and there is a unit with 1 HP on the field, you have to bounce that to the hand. Now, another thing I see a lot of people get confusion about is pairing and linking. So the key word here is all pilots can be paired with all units, but not all pilots can link with all units. So all pairs or all pairs or all links are pairs, but not all pairs are links, because a link is just a pair with extra steps. But it's just some units don't even have link conditions, so you'll never be able to link with that unit. And some pilots, I think, don't even have. Oh, actually, no. I haven't come across that yet. Every pilot has at least one unit it can link with. But the thing to know here is that when you do the link and the pair, there are very specific timings for that. So when a card may say when paired or when linked, it's going to trigger at the moment you play it from hand and put it on that unit. But we'll go past. So here's an example of like the pair versus link. So let's say I put Char Asimable on the Gundam. That's a pair. So you know how the Gundam has a during pair effect. So I still get that +1 AP effect to all units with the pair with Char. I don't get Rush, so I can't attack the turn I played that Gundam. And I also don't get the link effect for Char, where it gains high maneuver when you attack. But you still get that +1 AP when you attack with Char, because it's just a attack effect on its own. So on its base, it's just going to be 4 or 5, and then when you swing, it's going to be 5/5. Now the Gundam Epion with Zex, this one is a link condition because Zex meets the link. This unit would be able to attack during the turn I play it. And it also gains both the effect from Gundam Epion, and the effect from Zex. And these are during link. So this is a constant effect that is always present on the unit while the link condition is met. So when a unit is destroyed by one of your units while Epion's on the field, that trigger will come into play. Now, here's something that some people don't know or got wrong for Gundam Epion. This, at the moment a unit destroys an enemy unit with battle damage, that effect triggered. So, say your Gundam Epion is already active and you destroy it with you destroy an enemy unit with another unit, and you miss the timing for this, so you don't get the effect. It has to be done. Like, you essentially have to swing with Gundam Epion right away so that you can have it rested to be set active again. And this effect will only come into play once per turn. So if you have 2 on the field, maybe you swing 1 at the shield area, and then the other one will destroy a unit, then both will get to come active. And then when you destroy a unit, anytime Zex is linked with something, you get that draw 1 effect. So those are examples of link conditions and then link effects that are very specific to requiring that link on the unit. So the attack step. When you do declare an attack, this begins the attack step. So when you're declaring your attack, you're declaring an attack on... You have to declare the target first. That's the first thing. So you're attacking your opponent, which means when you attack your opponent, you are attacking their shield area. Or every attack on the shield area is going an attack on your opponent. So to get to your opponent, you have to go through the shield area. Or you're attacking one of your opponent's rested units. You can only target rested units. There are cards out there that have effects that will allow you to target an opponent's active unit. But for simplicity's sake, it's just either a rested unit or you're attacking your opponent. So at that point, you're going through their bases and their shield area cards until you can attack your opponent directly. And the game ends when you can attack your opponent directly. If your opponent takes damage at that moment, you win. So that's the goal of the game. So once you declare your target, um, anything with the attack keyword on that unit will also come into effect. So the effect triggers at the moment you declare a target. So if it says on attack, rest a unit, or on attack, you deal 5 damage to something. Not that there is anything that does 5 damage. There's Aegis Gundam will do 2 or 3 damage to a level 5 or higher on attack. So that's an example of that. And the damage is done before anything else. So you resolve effects as soon as the timing occurs. And then once you do that, all that and all the effects have been triggered and handled, we'll go into the block step. Which the block step is if your opponent has a unit on their side of the field that has the blocker keyword and it's active, they may rest that unit, and then the target of your attack is now going to be that blocking unit. If your unit has high maneuver, the defending player can't activate a blocker. So blockers are essentially moot if you have those high maneuver units. Now, there are, like I said, attack effects. They still are valid at the moment of. So, Z Zulu is a great card as an example. When you declare an attack on the player, it gains +2 AP. Because it got blocked and the target changed, that effect already resolved. So it still keeps that +2 AP, even though it's not attacking the player anymore. And of course, the defending player doesn't have to declare a blocker if they don't want to. This is just a step for them to do so if they have the unit. And if they choose not to, then you go to the next step, which is the action step. So the action step will start with the defending player. They get an opportunity to play one of their command cards that have the action keyword in it, or maybe even the act. There's some units that might have activate action in their description. So then you'd pay the cost or do whatever the cost of using that effect is. But you'll play the cards from the hand. You have to have the resource available to you to pay for it. So if you have 0 resource available, and you can't play cards from hand at that point. But if the defending player passes or does play a card, then the attacking player also can play an action card. And you'll resolve these effects immediately as soon as you play them. So if it says deal 2 damage or bounce this card to hand. So in the scenario that you play a card that bounces something, if the defending or attacking unit is removed from the field of play, then essentially the attack is over. Because if the attacking unit doesn't have a target, or there is no more attacking unit, then there's no more battle damage to be done. But until both players consecutively choose to pass on their action, it can go back and forth. So let's say the defending player says, no, I don't want to play an action card. Then me as an attacking player, I'll pay a card. Then the defending player might say, okay, now I'll play a card. And then it can go back and forth until both players pass. So there's different types of action cards to know. So you got like this Heart Set on Revenge. It has the action keyword only. So that means it can only be played during your action step. So those are those keywords that you need to be aware of. Not every command card can be played during the action step. It requires that action keyword. Some can be done during both the action step or the main phase. Some can only be done during the main phase. And then here's an example of the activate action. So that it's a unit. The unit has to be on the field of play for you to do this effect. And note the little 1 in the circle right here next to once per turn. So you can only trigger this once per turn, obviously, because of that cute. But this is the cost. So you have to have 1 resource available to be able to do this effect. Damage step. So at this point, you declared your blockers, you declared your target, and now you're going to do your damage. So if any unit was removed from field play, obviously the attack's over. There's no damage to be done. If the target is a unit, you're exchanging damage. So You take the AP of the attacking unit, apply it to the defending unit. You take the AP of the defending unit and apply it to the attacking unit. And if the AP is higher than the HP, then the units are destroyed. Otherwise, you put damage counters on the units to signify how much damage is placed on that unit. There are some effects that come into play with damage. So like first strike, I'll cover that later. If a unit has first strike, the attacking unit gets to do the damage first. Now, if you're doing an attack on the player, this is the shield area I'm talking about. So you'll do that X number AP damage to the base, or if there is no base present in their shield cards, you'll destroy one shield card. And it doesn't matter how much damage you're swinging into that shield. All that damage goes to one shield per attack. Unless it's suppression, which we'll cover later. And then, if any effect said something like during this battle, once the battle's over, that effect goes away. So there's some effects that are like during your turn or during the turn, and then there's some effects I'll say during the battle. So if you trigger an effect during the battle, it's not like it. Maybe you boost someone's AP for a battle, but they don't keep that AP after that battle's over. Now, every time you destroy a shield card, that's your goal, is to get through all 6 of your opponent's shield cards. Each attack on the player will destroy one shield, unless it's suppression, which then you're destroying 2 simultaneously. When a shield is destroyed, the defending player is going to reveal the card. And if the card has what's called a burst keyword on it, they can trigger this effect. So, whereas most effects in this game are required and you have to do it, burst is optional. So if it says burst, deploy this base, if it's a base, you can choose to ignore it and add it to your trash. If you don't want to activate it, it goes to the trash, and if it doesn't have a burst effect, then it's going to the trash regardless. So here's an example of different burst cards. So you have like close combat. It'll just say activate this card's main effect, which means choose one enemy and do 2 damage to it. You have the Alexandria, which is a base. So when you reveal a base from your shield, you can choose to deploy it, and then you do the effect, which you'll always take another shield, add it to your hand. When you're playing a base, you don't have to show that shield you're adding to your hand. It's only when it's destroyed you reveal it. And pilots, they generally always get bursts to add to your hand also. Now, there are some command cards out there that'll just say play this card's main effect, but some command cards will also have a separate burst effect compared to the main effect. So there are some cards that'll be like draw a card instead of doing some other effect. And then there's some bases that have effects that only trigger on your turn. So this Falmo, if you deploy it from burst, you do not get the rested Char's Daku 2 token. It has to be during your turn if you played it. So you'd have to play it from hand to get that token. But if you can still deploy the base from shield, you just don't get that token. So the big thing with Gundam is there's a lot of keywords to know, and you should know pretty much essentially what each one means, because they drive the game to, So, repair, breach, and support. These are 3 keywords that are always going to be associated with a number on each of them. So, a unit with, let's say, repair 2, when you end your turn, if you have damage counters on it, you'll remove X number of that damage from the unit at the end of the turn. Generally, though, that means like you want to swing into some. If you're like me, I have like the Gundam with Amuro, so I'll swing into something with 2 AP so I can get a free play essentially, because you repair that damage all the way back, because that Gundam has repair 2. Breach. When you destroy an enemy unit, you deal X amount of damage to the shield area. So either you're destroying the shield card, or you're doing damage to an enemy base, which in the case of like Wing 0, it has Breach 5. So it is generally destroying a base if there's one there, except for ones that have 6 HP. But you have to destroy an enemy unit to trigger this effect. If you attack base, you obviously don't get the breach. and it only occurs when you're attacking. So if someone swings into your unit with breach and destroys it, there's no breach for that card being destroyed. It's only when you're attacking. Support is another one. So you rest a unit and you give another unit AP plus X. Now, repair, support, and breach, they all stack, which means if you have other cards that give repair or support or breach, you can stack it. So you can make a breach 3 into a breach 5 or a repair 2 into a repair 3. It all just depends on what the card given it does. And then the biggest thing about breach is that it damages shield area only. So you can't end the game with breach. So if your opponent has no shield left, you swing something with breach into a unit and it destroys that unit, your opponent's still alive because they're not taking the damage directly. The breach only does damage to shield area, and the player is not shield area. So when you're attacking the player, you go through the shield area. There's some effects that only trigger on attacking shield area cards or protecting shield area cards. So it's good to know the differentiation. You're always attacking the player, but you go through the shield area. Blockers, as we covered earlier, you rest an active unit while defending, and it can change the attack target to this unit. First strike, as mentioned also, damage from the attacking unit is dealt first before the defending unit. So if you're attacking with enough damage that you destroy the defending unit, you don't take damage because you destroyed them before they could damage you. Normally, you're doing the damage simultaneously, so first strike is very limited in when it is, and it's only when that unit is attacking. So if that unit is being attacked, there is no first strike. High maneuver, your opponent can't activate blockers while a unit with this attacks. And then suppression, you destroy 2 shield cards. And when you're just using suppression, those 2 shield cards are revealed at the same time. And the defend player can choose how they want to resolve burst effects if there are. If they both are, let's say, bases, they can choose just one of the bases to deploy. It's not just like you're reveal one and then one again. You do both at the same time. Now, this is like all timing stuff, so if a unit has activate main or activate action, it just shows the timing that effect can be done. And then main and action are for command cards. So some will have only main, some will have action, and some may have both. But those are just like the timings those can be played. Burst is from shield cards that are destroyed, so you trigger those effects at that. And as stated, they are optional as opposed to most of the effects in this game. Deploy, you do this at the moment it's triggered when the card is played to the field. So a unit, when it's deployed, you do whatever that card says up to it, however much it can. Attack, same thing. When you declare an attack target, you do as much of that effect as you can if the conditions are met. And destroyed, this is very specific to when a unit is destroyed from the field of play. I've had some people try to argue about destroyed from, like, let's say that unit was a shield card. It was on the field of play, so it doesn't get its destroyed effect just because it's going into the trash. It has to be destroyed while it's on the field, not going from the shield to the trash. When paired and when linked, these are the moments that a pilot is put on that unit. So generally you're getting that effect at that moment only, and then the next turn, it's not persistent. During pair and during link, these are persistent effects that will keep on going while the pilot that's paired or linked to a unit meets the condition. So just kind of, that's the key thing to get there. When and during, those are the big differentiations between the timings there. And also, I think Gundam has probably the most well-written effects in the game. And some people try to overthink it, and it's just literally like, if it says to do this, then this, and you can't do the first part, then obviously you can't do the rest of the part either. So like Mikazuki, when you pair him with something, you do if you have to do damage to an opponent unit, and then you can do damage to one of your units. If there are no opponent units to do damage to, then you can't do the damage to yourself. So, now let's say you have all this knowledge, you want to go ahead and give it a shot, you want to actually try and play this game. So, obviously the best place to play is your local comic, trading card game store. You can use the Bandai TCG Plus app. You can search for events through there. If you know where a local store is already, then you can do that. Stores like my local store, I am happy to have because they have a great community, great owners, and they still have good stock on uh, booster packs for Gundam. Starter decks, that's been the hard part because there's not been enough starter decks to go around. And unfortunately, with this game, some starter deck cards are very essential for a lot of decks. So you might have to, purchase the singles or from like online, like TCG Player or eBay if you need them. But otherwise, just hope that your local store has some good stock so that you can get started on this. And maybe you're lucky. Maybe they have some starter deck cards on hand or an actual sealed deck available. And then you can get that journey started. If not, maybe they allow you to do proxies. I don't think having the cards physically is always required. There's other ways to play, but if you don't have the cards physically. Ween Table is a great resource to use. So you'll build your decks on other websites like EXBurst, Eggman, and you can build a deck out. You'll play against bot. So Ween Table is specifically against bot. The bot AI might not be the best. If you subscribe to the Patreon for Ween Table, it'll give you different options for the bot AI that I heard is much better. And you also can do like sealed play, which is really cool. But it's a good way to just kind of understand how your deck plays before you actually play against other players. And when you feel confident about your deck and you want to go against actual good opponents, places like Mobile Suit Arena is really good. This is probably one of the most popular online ways to play Gundam right now is. So you just go in different lobbies and you load up your deck and you just either start a lobby or join a lobby. And they're still working on this. This is still like early. They said that they're going to work on like ranked ladders at some point, so that'll be really cool. Make the game a bit more competitive. Zumbo Sim is another one. So you'll log in with your Discord and kind of like Mobile Suit Arena, it just has online lobbies that you can load your deck into and play against other players. Some people like to use Tabletop Simulator. So Tabletop Simulator is a game that you can purchase through like Steam. And the Steam Workshop actually has a scripted mod for Gundam Card Game that is really well done. So it'll handle like certain aspects of the game that you might not have to keep track of. You still have to do like a lot of the card stuff, like maybe setting them active or inactive and that stuff, resting them. Just, a lot of the other game, like Mobile Suit Arena, Zumbo Sim, I think they're Ween Table, they all do all that stuff. So Tabletop Simulator might not be as popular as it used to be. And of course, if you want to play with others and you have the physical product in hand, there are webcam as options. There's a lot of great Gundam Discord communities out there that they'll play games through webcam. You can do online tournaments through webcam, but it's really the great way to get into it if you don't have a good local scene available to you. I think that's pretty much it. Of course, like I didn't dive too much into mechanics and like how decks play and stuff like that. This is more just about basic essentials you need to know so that you can understand the game going forward. And hopefully, if you stuck with me through this whole video, it was insightful. Maybe you just needed to get something cleared up to you on something, or you're a new player interested in trying out Gundam. But gonna see if I can maybe try to get more consistent with the content creation stuff. Maybe I'll do like film some of my locals because that's what's been really keeping me busy is actually playing Gundam physically. So I haven't been home much lately. It's like I'm playing Gundam, I'm playing Pokemon, I'm always out. So I don't get much time home, but I want to try and make, this is a fun hobby of mine. I don't expect much from it, but it's fun to just be able to inform others about this game because it's my personal favorite card game and I want others to be able to get into it. So I hope you all enjoy. Stay tuned for the future. Always feel free to give me suggestions if you want. And I'll see y'all next time.